Good morning, everyone. Good morning. This is a different room than I'm used to speaking in at the Chamber. I recently started a new role at Walmart and Walmart Foundation, but previously I was on the workforce side, and so I was usually with the Chamber's workforce space. So one of the things that we've heard a lot in the last couple of days are different definitions of resilience. I'm going to add another one. Is that okay? When I took this role, the first thing I thought about resilience was in my engineering background. I'm a systems and material science engineer by training. And when I first took this role, I thought about the word toughness. And the engineering definition for toughness is the ability for energy absorption to the point of rupture. But in material science, the definition of resilience is energy absorption to the point of bounce back. And as I thought about the role and what we're going to do today, I wanted to offer an even more broader lens for that. Resilience isn't only about individual or institutional grit or toughness. It is relational capacity. It's about whether every person, customer, member, associate, supplier, and every business can access what they need and who they need before, during, and after disruption. At Walmart, we operate in thousands of locations across the country. 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. That's a business fact for us, but it's also an opportunity for us. Our community resilience portfolio at Walmart and the Walmart Foundation spans disaster preparedness and recovery, our global hunger relief, and community connection and belonging portfolios. And here's why we hold those three things together. Food insecurity turns everyday life into a continuous emergency, which makes it much harder for a family to absorb the next emergency. When neighbors don't know each other, there's no one to check on the elderly, there's no one to check on the neighbor next door across the street. So when the food bank is already strong, where neighbors are already connected, when trust already exists, that's one less thing a family has to solve in its crisis. It's one less thing an emergency manager has to stand up from scratch. Hunger relief and social connections aren't separate from disaster work. They are resilience infrastructure. We depend on healthy, connected, resilient communities. Our associates live in them. Our suppliers operate within them. Our customers navigate them every day. And frankly, our business success depends on these communities having access to the nutritious food and ability to cover when disaster or any type of intervention exists. That's why we think about community resilience as a whole system. Because at the end of the day, a community is more resilient when people know they can feed their families tomorrow and when they know their neighbors will be there when it matters the most. So today's conversation brings together leaders who understand that resilience is a shared responsibility. And I'm happy to have these grantees and partners with us. We have Rita Carrion, a great friend and the Vice President of Health at Unidos US. Marcus Coleman, Vice President of Community Resilience Strategy at United Way Worldwide. And Kathleen Strickland, who's the Chief Network Officer at Feeding America. All right, you ready to get into it? Yes. All right. My first question is actually going to go with you, Rita. What are the biggest barriers you see that prevent communities from accessing food, support, and services, especially when disaster strikes?
So Marvin, thank you, and it's great to be here. I think a lot of the work that we've been doing at Unidos US was formerly the National Council of La Raza. We are a national organization that partners with about 300 community-based organizations. So we're across the country, have a network. We work every day to ensure that Latinos and communities are able not only to survive, but also to thrive. And so a lot of the work, and while I may talk about the work around health, we also do housing counseling, we do workforce development, economic mobility, education, and sprinkled into all of that is civic engagement and immigration integration. So a lot of the work in terms of how we think about resilience and the barriers we see every day consistently come through every single disaster that we have seen and disruption that we have seen. And so I'll highlight about 4 of them. One of the things, and I'm using my 10 cards because I'm at the stage of, and I'm just going to normalize it, premenopausal, so I may not be completely on tap, but I need my notes.
We got you.
Yeah, okay, I know. And I know a lot of partners, support us. So. So I think one of the biggest things, and I was really glad to see the youth talk about the work that they were doing and starting really young, but Cameron mentioned about his dad saying that he didn't get that emergency response. So information that people cannot access is the same as not having any information at all. It is super important for us, and I think we all know this, is that we need to have timely information, clear information, and in-language information. And what do I mean about in-language? It is ensuring that it is language that people can understand. And a lot of times, and with major cuts, oftentimes that second or third language is cut, and we're only being able to provide that information in that language. It's almost functioning, and even with technology, it's all digital, a lot of things are disruptive. So when we not have access to that information, then it makes the recovery much longer and harder. The other area that I think is also that we've been seeing, and we saw this with Hurricane Maria, Irma, Harvey, we were together actually as partners, at our conference, when the shooting happened in El Paso, and it is that fear. Fear is a disaster multiplier. What we're seeing today is that we see a lot of families are fearing whether they're going to be discriminated, whether they're going to be separated with their families, or whether they're going to be deported. And that should not be happening in this country. I think the important thing for us is we don't want them to be unseen, and then we're not going to be able to help everyone. We're in this work together because we want to help human beings. And fear should not be that element to keep us from being able to do some of this work effectively. And then you talked about trust. And trust is very important. It's not only the gaps, and it's not just a lack of resilience, but it limits our response. We know that with our community-based organizations that we work with, when we're only utilized for temporary partners or optional partners, that core need of not working with local community-based organizations is that you're missing from those that already have been trusted for a long time, where they provide needs and support. A lot of our CBOs, and we actually even have Hispanic Chambers of Commerce that are part of our affiliate network, educations, institutions, charter schools, workforce development agencies. We know and do this every day. So it's important for us to be able to trust not only the established relationships that we have with our communities, but help facilitate that connection with institutions. And then fourth, because we are in DC and where our headquarters are right up the street, it is something that we've been working on significantly over the last couple years, and actually why we were established as a civil rights and advocacy organization, because we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity and fairness and a just society to live in this country. And we know that disasters also expose long-standing policy, data, and investments when there's failures to invest in our infrastructure. And oftentimes, these disruptions can be man-made. And so when there's cuts to programs, like potentially STEP, well, not potentially, we see it now, 3 million people are not having access to SNAP, or the cuts that we're going to see in Medicaid. These are critical elements to just make sure that we are having the basic needs that we need. So disasters don't create inequality, they just reveal them. So I think those 4 areas are super important for us to address as the barriers, and we can talk about what does that look like in terms of how we can fix them.
Thanks, Rita. That's a really good transition to Catherine. We know Feeding America serves tens of millions of people every year. What has the Feeding America network taught you about the gap between resources that exist and people's ability to reach them, particularly in rural and underserved areas?
Yeah, no, really appreciate the question, Marvin, and also just thank you and the U.S. Chamber for hosting us today and allowing us to be part of this critical conversation. And I think it's really fitting, Marvin, because Feeding America's relationship with Walmart started in the wake of Hurricane Katrina with a $1 million gift to ensure that residents impacted by that hurricane had food access. So I think it might be helpful for me just to give you a snapshot of how Feeding America operates. So we are a national network of over 250 food banks, which are essentially nonprofit food distributors. So think of commercial scale warehousing, drive-in cold storage, fleets of refrigerated trucks. And that enables us to handle and distribute food directly to people facing hunger, but predominantly through 60,000 grassroots food pantries and food programs. And that means that we're able to provide nearly 6 billion meals every year in every county, parish, and borough across this U.S. And so when we think about the gaps between basically food and people's access to it, we've learned one critical thing, and that is to listen to the people most impacted by the problem that you're wanting to solve. So we listen directly to people facing hunger because they are in the best position to tell us what the barriers are and how to solve it. So several years ago, we hosted listening sessions and regional summits across this country, not only with all of our members, but also with people with living experience of food insecurity to tell us what should our priorities be as a national network for the next 5 years. And they were very direct and very clear that they deeply valued their connection to the supports and the opportunities that our network offered. And there were so many neighbors and communities that they are aware of that were not. And they told us about people who are homebound and unable to reach a food distribution, working moms who simply do not have the time to get to a food pantry during their hours of operation, as well as communities who are historically left out, like rural residents and communities of color. And they also told us not only what to prioritize, but how to solve it. And they urged us to develop relationships with people who are leaders and organizations already trusted in those communities. And when we have pursued that, it has been a game changer for us. It has really unlocked opportunities and it's changing how we operate. And I'd love just to give 2 quick examples. One of them is in Southeast Missouri. So that food bank there started doing listening sessions with neighbors and community leaders, just like we did nationally, and they learned something that deeply surprised them, and they were a bit chagrined by it. So they had been operating a mobile pantry within a community that was predominantly Black, hosted by a church, and they learned from the pastor, most importantly from the pastor's wife, and congregants that pantry, being mobile, gave a message that was unintended, because the community was just thinking, oh, when the funding dries up, they're just going to pull out like everyone else has, and they're not really interested in a real, authentic relationship. And the food bank was just completely shocked, because that was not actually their intention, and it completely changed how they operate. So that food bank now has community engagement staff members that are of and from and are rooted in that community. And they sat down at tables with congregants and with the pastor to plan services. So now not only do they have mobile pantries that are there, but also they're working on things like a farmer's market and exploring opportunities like things that United Way is vested in, like daycare. Another example I'll just give from a national level, what this has inspired is for us to really examine who we're in relationship with and who we're not, and we should be. And that's what embarked us on this journey of becoming connected to Unidos US. And Rita's now serving on Feeding America's board. And this made all the difference in the world when Helene and Milton hit. You know, that impacted 16 of our members across 6 states, but we were able to connect local food banks to Unidos local affiliates to ensure if there was a need for translators, they were connected. If there was need for accurate information about where those food distributions were, they were connected. So it's made all the difference.
I love that. Thank you, Catherine. I'm going to switch to you, Marcus.
All right.
I mean, you're from a very small organization.
I am. Very small.
Very small.
We just got here.
Yes, yes. United Way, and I think it's the work you're doing right now is fitting, right? You know, United Way works across a broad spectrum of community needs, be that hunger, be that access to education and workforce. How do you see these vulnerabilities we talked about this morning compounding, where a lack of one resource like food or housing makes people more fragile when the next disaster hits?
No, I appreciate the question, Marvin. I appreciate the Chamber for hosting this convening. So there's 3 ways that I see this really challenging United Way and challenging, I think, many of our organizations. And it's actually rooted in what the Resilience Conference talked about last year and what they had in their report Beyond the Preparedness Payoff. They talked about 6 levers, essentially, to build resilience. And 3 of them that I'll cover, civic engagement, cross-sector leadership, risk-informed design. So United Way has been around for 138 years. It is remarkable as we look at America's 250th anniversary that we are continuing to ask the question, how do we show up for our neighbors in times of crisis? And at United Way, you know, something that's fundamentally true is that at the center of the story of any community, to what my friends at Feeding America and Unidos US talked about, is making sure that we have two-way communication and be able to assess and act on community needs, and that's what we're focused on at United Way alongside many of our partners. So when we talk about civic engagement and the power of civic engagement, it's been encouraging. The Chamber, Walmart, Home Depot, Verizon, a few others have been helping us guide through this question of what does the platform of United Way need to be? So our United Way is operating communities by working with smaller community-based organizations, by convening spaces to have conversations like this, and by making sure that we're allocating resources in a way that makes sense. But who do we need to be to make sure that we are thinking about the social infrastructure in addition to conversations that are happening about the critical infrastructure? And in places like the greater Valdosta area, our United Way partnered with the local food bank, Salvation Army, Red Cross, before Helene happened. When Helene occurred, those same relationships translated into addressing food insecurity and social and emotional well-being. When we talk about cross-sector leadership, of course, it is still tornado season. And so we think about some of the power that we see in cross-sector leadership in places like Enid, Oklahoma, where the mayor brings together the food bank, Salvation Army, Red Cross, the United Way, and talks about, we've had a tornado here, and we're going to start with cross-sector leadership to ensure that we're not duplicating efforts and that we're optimizing opportunities to help places stay open, help people get back to work, and if folks are not able to get back and work and get to school, that they have the support that they need. And so, you know, when I think about just the challenge that's in front of us, I'll go to the last lever, risk-informed design. Many of our communities know the risk landscape is changing. Was able to spend some time this February with United Way leaders in Western North Carolina, and as many of you would assume, they didn't plan for that much water to hit their part of the state. Hawaii didn't plan for a fire the size of what happened in Maui and then have substantial flooding a few years later. Many of the communities that we all serve don't plan for extreme heat, but we know that the risks are increasing, and that informs how we need to continue to collaborate. And it's been amazing to see the power of not just United Way's network, but really the nonprofit sector really step up and step into a new space to think about how we can leverage that ability to keep communities engaged civically and promote some of their cross-sector leadership to come up with practical solutions to help people be better prepared for what's to come.
Thanks. That's really helpful, Marcus. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in our portfolio is our grantees. We haven't really convened our grantees together. We have our food and hunger grantees in one portfolio. We have our grantees focused on connection and addressing the issue of loneliness in one portfolio, and then disaster grantees in a different portfolio. And one thing that through Brooks's leadership and with work with the rest of the team, is we're really thinking about what is the operating model required in the community so that a community can bounce back, does have the plasticity during a natural disaster, to make it stronger. Why? For many reasons, right? The operating environment that would ensure that our associates can get back to work, that our customers can come back into the stores, that the supply chain continues to move so that milk can get to needy families is an essential piece to all of that. And so that thinking about the operating system, I really want to ask another question, and we want to keep the answers succinct as we try to get to deeper questions at the end. Rita, UNIDOS, of course, focuses on Latino communities. Thinking about this broader conversations, can you share examples of a model or approach that's worked really well through UNIDOS' work?
Yeah, and well, we're one of the largest Latino civil rights organizations. Our affiliates, community-based organizations, see everyone that comes through the door. So we also have coalitions and partnerships, whether it's with Feeding America, United Way, the National Urban League, NAACP, the Asian Pacific Health Forum. We work in community, not only at the national level, but also at the local level. And I think one of the biggest models for us, especially in the health space, and we see them as critical to a lot of the other work in terms of our housing counseling and workforce development, is our trusted messengers, which are promotoras de salud, or community health workers. They know the community, they're trusted, they come from the community, they are also themselves having that lived experience, and so they are able to navigate what is important and where, how to kind of be able to connect with the systems that a lot of these communities are not necessarily involved in. And we've been able to, and because of their mobilization and the work that we do as a kind of a training, technical assistance, communication support, providing them with toolkits, we're able to really meet the need at a multiple localized level. During COVID, we were able to, establish about 34,000 public and private partnerships across the country. We stood up a number of different sites that was able to get up to 12,000 sites to make sure that people understood what was happening and what information they needed on a timely basis. And then we were able to train about 5,000 trusted messengers to be able to go out into the community and be able to function and stuff. So I think the force is that, what is it? The cultural lens and that secret sauce is on our promotores de salud.
Thank you. Perfect. Catherine, I'm going to go back to you. I think very similarly, Feeding America thinks about food access as a resilient strategy. So how have you been thinking about that in order to make communities stronger, better prepared for the next disaster?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for us, food access is an antidote to hunger, which is an everyday disaster in the lives of millions of children and individuals every year. And for us, food access is central to our strategies. It's core to who we are. And that's why we're, with Walmart's support, investing in the infrastructure of food pantries all across this country so that they can recover food at grocery stores like Walmart's and others and bolster their supplies and increase their hours of operation. It's why we're investing in American farmers, so when they plant crops and then there's not a market for it for forces beyond their control, they are still able to harvest that and ensure that through our network, it's reaching the tables of families. It's why we're investing in food banks to have the ability to process protein. So when partners like Tyson sell more chicken breasts than, say, drumsticks, we're able to accept those bulk donations of proteins, process and package them, and ensure they reach families' tables. It's also why we're partnering with technology companies so that just by inserting your zip code, you can get accurate information anywhere in this country where to access food. But more than that, we're investing in relationships. And that's so to make it easy for all of us to act as neighbors helping neighbors. I am from Alabama, if you can't tell from my accent, and grew up in food banking in Alabama, and was actually on staff at a food bank when the F4 and F5 tornadoes tore through that state in 2011. And we were without power, we were without communications, no cell phone service, there was no fuel that you could access. And just through a resilient community response, we were able to mobilize and make that response happen. But one thing I will never forget is in Phil Campbell, Alabama, that's the northwest corner of the state, there was one of our food pantry partners, a small Baptist church. It was brick. They had just paid off their mortgage. That tornado swept it clean off its foundation. It was there 1 hour, it was not the next. And 24 hours later, out of respect for his privacy, I will just call him Paul, the food pantry leader, he lost his daughter in that storm. And yet he showed up the next day at the food bank with his truck to fill it with supplies, because he knew that there were others in his community that had also lost loved ones. And he set aside his own pain and his own grief because he knew that others may not accept help from a stranger, but they would from him because he was known and trusted. And I will never forget that. And so we are striving to make it easier for people to act on the care that they have for each other. So fast forward today, I'm happy to say that my hometown food bank in Alabama, they are now operating out of a state-of-the-art facility with generator support. They can handle any surge in product that's needed in a disaster. They have a safe room for their staff and community members. They are connected to their local EMAs, not only at the local level, but at the state level. They are hosting disaster conversations with local VOADs, with United Way, to plan. And I'll also say that they now have a branch very close to Phil Campbell, so that now the next time that disaster strikes, Paul and people like him will not have to come to us, we can go to them.
Thank you. I'm going to pivot a little bit and throw you off your game, Marcus, if that's okay.
That's okay.
All right, so I'm just want to know that. this ain't prepared remarks.
Yeah.
Marcus, can you talk about what you've learned in your role, and about the role the private sector can play, not just in funding, but in strengthening ties between community resources, especially that's needed during disaster?
That's a great question, man. And I'll go to Russ Strickland from Maryland Emergency Management and Patrick Sheehan from Tennessee Emergency Management. Was able to join them and several emergency managers yesterday for a conversation convened by the Chamber. And, some realities, I think, is the good thing is in emergency management, at least, we have the tools and the mechanisms for resilience. We can set up the formal agreements through the emergency operations plans, talking about roles in emergency operations centers. There's an entire engagement process that involves the community. And so the good thing is in the emergency management system, the opportunity for the feedback loop exists. Where community-based organizations like ours, can continue to be helpful is ensuring that we can help build that trust and, as appropriate and in a respectful way, bring perspectives for folks that may not necessarily know what an EOC, ICS, or any of the acronyms that come with emergency management are, but do understand we need to feed people, we need to shelter people, people need access to different kind of healthcare services. And so I'll say my recommendation as we think about where we head from here, one of them is just very practically, where can local chambers, local community, our respective local chapters come to those local emergency managers and say, let's take a second look at the emergency operations plan and how we work together, and then where can we identify gaps for how we continue to meet some of these needs. Nationally, and this is where I've been so thankful for partners like Walmart and for the Chamber, is it's helping, especially the course of incoming executives on the nonprofit side, continue to connect with executives on the private sector side. Because I think what we know is true is the past 8+ years, there's been a lot of changes and disruptions, and I think a lot of the operating assumptions have shifted. And so having rooms like this connect, or rooms like the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters, which is also meeting right now in Reno, is going to continue to be critical, so we can continue to do some of that practical emergency operations planning work on the ground locally, but then we can also ensure that executives can continue to understand how to align capabilities and capacities at the national level.
That's such a great point. One of the things that there are two things that are looming that I think folks are worried about across the country, right? The first thing, of course, we hear about the dramatic drop-off in college enrollment, but there's also a looming dramatic drop-off in leadership, particularly nonprofit leadership and volunteerism, right? And so super worried about that kind of continuity of operations and leadership and thought and institutional knowledge leaving communities. So I'm going to end us with a question for all of you. If you could change one thing about how we as a country prepare communities for disruption, what would it be? Simple, what would it be? Rita?
Well, I think disaster sees no color, but response does. And so I think we all have a responsibility to change that. I honestly think that we're all humans at the end of the day. And we're living in an amazing, beautiful country that we're about to celebrate 250 years of beautiful parks and people and gatherings and being able to connect with each other. We have a responsibility to make sure that we're protecting our country.
Thank you.
I would say I have seen such powerful commitment to community in times of disaster. And I believe that we can carry that forward in every day. I've seen food pantry leaders share resources and change hours of operation in order to meet the need during Helene and Milton. And I think that they can, if we can come together and bring that better together ethos under blue skies, then we will have the resilience that can weather any disaster and always emerge from them stronger.
Yeah. For me, I think proactive investment in community engagement. So in New Orleans, I know many of our companies were probably sitting with communities throughout the Gulf looking at 20 years past since Hurricane Katrina. And two things that were instructive for me. One, whenever there was proactive community investment, recovery outcomes tended to be better in some communities. And then for the communities that didn't have that proactive investment, it's been amazing to see. We were with Verizon and others where we were opening up a resiliency center, but being able to have that proactive investment to access to information. Like, I'm challenged by the panel that we had from some of the youth and young adults that were speaking up here earlier. Like, the thing that I think that proactive investment does is ensures that we answer the question of how everybody can receive alerts, warning, and information in a language in a way that they understand.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing that I think would shift and really create some of the catalysts for the resilience that we seek in this country.
And real quick, what can philanthropy do to support that exact?
I mean, that's a straightforward question,
okay.
man. No, you know what? I appreciate when philanthropy provides space for folks to speak beyond funding. So like the reality for our local chapters is very real. Bills got to get paid.
Right.
But what's also true is that we appreciate corporate philanthropy, institutional philanthropy, and others. Again, being able to provide some spaces and places to help really infuse conversations that are beyond some of the short-term realities, but then be able to invest with multi-year thinking.
Yep.
I think many of our local United Ways are very clear. They have answers to solutions, but it's hard to think about solving those solutions where if every year they got to figure out how are we going to keep this momentum building.
Right.
So that would be a practical way.
And what about you, Catherine and Rita? How might the private sector, right, not just big companies like Walmart, but small business leaders?
Yeah, I mean, your expertise. Hunger is a solvable problem, and it's a complex one. So we can certainly benefit if you have expertise in technology, healthcare, logistics, the food industry, but also communications, marketing, finance. When I think about what happened in Asheville, North Carolina, that was the first time we ever lost a food bank's entire facility and all their supplies in a flood because of Helene. And within one business day, that food bank was up and operating and distributing food. That was because of the private sector coming forward and ensuring that their leadership team had a place to mobilize. Your expertise is so vital for us to be not only effective, but efficient.
Yeah, and I would say not only it's around the relationship. Yes, the funding is important, and we need to make sure that we're paying our bills. But a lot of our relationships is also ensuring that it's not transactional. It's being able to call each other up and say, "Hey, we need something. We need some trucks to head out to Puerto Rico, for example, or be able to connect with each other." That's a critical element for us and how we see it, and not for folks to see community-based organizations as temporary partners or optional partners or at risk because they're too small or they serve a certain population and I've got to make sure I'm okay. No, this is about communities and being able to share each other's resources, being able to ensure that there are assets that come from both ends. A lot of the Latino communities and communities, they know how to fix things. They fix them throughout. When we're not getting support in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria, you had a number of affiliates pushing and pulling information out to Puerto Rico, and we were able to allocate resources and help a lot of families locate to the states in different parts of the states. So I think there is this level of not just a transaction, but a relationship.
Perfect. Well, thank you to this illustrious panel. Can you give them all a hand, please? And thank you to the Chamber for allowing us to share with you today.